Hi, Dr. Simeon Roger here. And have you ever tried to get into that coveted place, that coveted psychological, psychophysical place known as the zone, or into what other people have called the state of flow, right? Because when you're in the state of flow, everything works beautifully, doesn't it? And people talk about the state of flow, being in the zone in reference to, pretty much anything they're working on, if you think about it. It could be a project at work or some other creative endeavor, and certainly could be a sporting event, right? Or it could be your hobby or whatever. But let's go back to sporting events for a moment. So there was a female athlete who noticed that when she was in the zone, naturally everything went super well. So a certain percentage of the time when she was in her sport, she was doing really well. But it was a small percentage of the time, right? So whenever she got into this zone, everything sort of fell into place. Her performance was magical almost. But then she asked the natural question, which all of us do: why the heck can't I do that all the time? Right? So she conducted a bunch of scientific studies and read scientific literature and, looking at all the evidence, she came to a very, very surprising conclusion. That conclusion was the following: that when athletes are in the zone, one of the markers of being in the zone, the most obvious, physically obvious, externally obvious marker is lack of eye movement. She called it quiet eye. Lack of eye movement. Yeah, so athletes who are in the zone tend to be very focused in terms of where their eyes rest. Their eyes tend to, rest on the ball, on the hoop, on the, pick whatever the marker is, depending on the sport, the activity. So that's a physiological marker, an external marker that seems very common for athletes. Now, science would explain that as when there is that lack of eye movement, therefore there's a lot of focus, and science will say the brain can process information, process more information, process it faster. Okay, that's as okay as far as it goes. But from everything else we know about this state, we know that conscious thought is not involved. We'll get to that in a minute. So the big question here, of course, is how do we replicate, how do we get ourselves into the zone? How can we replicate this? And certainly for this female athlete, that was her question. So let's look at some of the other markers of being in the zone, of being in the flow, right? Now, certainly other physical markers are fairly obvious. Breathing slows down. Heart rate slows down. We know that that's the case. And in addition to those physical markers, there are psychological ones too. So the person who's really in the zone feels very calm. They feel very calm and they feel very confident. And there's a certain openness, a certain lack of attempting to control an outcome, a sense of being perfectly fine with whatever is happening. And this is apparently what leads to this really peak performance, this exceptional performance, which you might define as sort of, doing the right thing at the right time, just perfect timing, perfect intuition almost, being a step ahead sometimes, knowing what's going to happen before it does. And this has been observed actually for millennia. This is nothing new. In ancient traditions also told us all about this and told us what this state consists of. And they defined it as, okay, you're in the present moment. The present moment means that there are no impending thoughts, no thoughts crowding your mind about the future, about the past. And when we say there's nothing, you're not obsessed with the future, obviously one of the things that is not impinging on your consciousness at that point is the outcome. So if you have released control of the outcome, you have released control of the future, right? And when you release control of the outcome, you're not falling into fight, flight, freeze. Right? So that explains that calmness and those physiological markers going down. In addition to that, the verbal mind stream is pretty much shut down. So you're not getting a lot of this inner dialogue, coming into your head. You're not feeling your emotions interrupting you and hijacking your attention. And there's really no planning going on. There's no planning, nothing logical, no linear thought really is involved in this. And all of those are the markers of this being in the zone, being in the flow. And this has been known for ages. But the question then still arises, how the hell do I get back there? Right? That's really what we want to know. And strange as it may seem, to go back to quiet eye, training lack of eye movement actually can bring you into that state of flow. It can bring you into the zone. And how would you do that? Well, there are all kinds of ways to do it, of course. You could even just, sit and meditate by looking at something like maybe a candle flame or an image or something like that. Or you can try doing physical activities, but restricting your eye movement and see what happens. Because we do know that if you can replicate some of the externally obvious physical markers of being in the zone, the mind will sometimes follow. And in fact, that's very much the case when we talk about human resilience. Obviously, being in the zone is a huge, huge factor. If to be a truly resilient person, you want to be able to get back into the zone reliably and fairly quickly whenever possible. You're not going to be there all the time. It's just the fact. But you do want to be able to get back there and to be there as much as possible. And we do have other methods that we talk about for that. Some of these methods I don't tend to talk about in the general public a lot. I tend to restrict them more to our community, simply because they take a lot more explanation, and they're sometimes a little bit more difficult for the average Westerner to digest. Nevertheless, knowing the physical markers and the psychological markers can really, really help you. But here's the key, and I'll leave you with this. The key is you can't force it, right? So if you're trying to get into the zone, that itself can be a showstopper. That itself can be the end of what you're trying to do, because again, you're trying to control an outcome, you're trying to achieve something, and the state that you're looking for is almost hostile to that entire mindset. So all you can really do to get into the zone, any way that you choose to get into the zone, is probably going to involve relaxing into it. That's it for now. Hope you find a way to get back into the zone. Leave your comments below, like and subscribe if you found this useful, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.